Welcome to the Spark on the Forge podcast. I'm Subrata Kar. Let me ask you something. How many AI tools is your team using right now? ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, maybe a few others. Now, here's a question that nobody's asking. What happens when these tools change their pricing, change their terms, or just simply disappear? You see, most companies didn't decide to become dependent on these tools. They just got drifted into it. One tool at a time, one workflow at a time. And that's exactly what worries my next guest today, Tamsin Deasey-Weinstein. She leads the AI strategy for Cayman Islands. Now, Cayman is a small 83,000 people, but it's a global financial hub. And in financial services, trust is everything. Mistakes are expensive. So when she started building AI into country's workforce, she asked different questions from everyone else. Not which tool should we use, but how do we make sure that we stay in control? And what she built, a training model that cost almost nothing, a governance system that actually speeds things up, and a plan to keep their data, their culture, and their capability local. And that's what I wanted to understand. Because if she can do this in a small island nation with limited resources, then you have no excuses. So let's get into it.
So my background historically is working to plug skills gaps. So late last year, the Office of the Premier actually launched a national digital transformation task force. I lead the AI and intelligence angle, the AI and intelligence pillar. And that's my big passion, really. And for many years, I've been saying that the only way this is going to work in any country is if those three entities are working together. So unless education, private industry and government work together, you will never, ever plug the skills gaps, whether that's AI driven, digital skills driven, whatever that might be.
Okay, so she said something that stopped me. Education, private industry, government, all three working together. And I immediately thought, wait, does that really actually happen? Because in most companies I see there is this gap. The people training talent, HR, learning and development, they're running their programs. The people setting strategy, CTO, product teams, they are picking tools, and they are not really talking to each other, at least not about AI. So you end up HR rolling out generic AI training while your CTO is deploying tools that nobody knows how to use. The gap, that's where the drifts begin to happen. But here is what caught my attention though about Tamsin. She sits in all three rooms, university, government, private sector, which means that she is able to see where the system is stuck before anyone else does. Now, on the surface, being in a small island of 83,000 people sounds like disadvantage. But she's about to flip that completely.
Here in Cayman, being a small island is both a blessing and a curse. But because of that, we have to have an educated workforce, obviously. And because it's back office financial services driven, AI is obviously disrupting it massively. So we have a bit of a divide in Cayman at the moment, I would say. We have about 83,000 people live here. We don't have that talent pool. Because we're small, it's a blessing. This is where the government aspect comes in and the cross working. I can pull together the university and the big providers, the big private industry and the government because we are small. So I have access to them. I mean, you can't imagine being in England and pulling together central government and all the universities and all of the big players in the private sector with one person doing that because it's practically impossible. But in Cayman, you can do that. So the government are on board, the university are on board, the private industry is on board. It can be done. We can all sit around a table and we can map out plans to protect our country's future.
Okay, this is interesting. She's saying being small is an advantage, not a limitation. And I get that logic. When you're 83,000 people, we can pool government, education, business into the same room. Decisions happen in weeks and not in quarters. But I'm immediately thinking, does this only work because Cayman is that small? Because most people listening aren't just running the island nations, they are running startups, mid sized companies, corporate divisions. So, does this actually scale? And here is what I think about what she's really pointing at. It is not about size, it's about speed. The moment you stop trying to change everything at once and just start with one team, one problem, one use case, you begin to move faster. Most companies don't do that. They copy big companies' behavior, long approvals, siloed teams, slow decisions, and they lose one edge they actually have. So let me ask you directly, are you using your size as an advantage right now, or are you making it harder than it needs to be? All right, small can be fast. Now I want to understand why she treats AI as workforce pattern first and not technology role.
So I think this is a major point that lots of people still miss, many people. So people go, we need to think about compute, we need to think about data. What they need to think about is talent, because it doesn't matter how amazing the system is that you buy or build. It doesn't matter what access to data you have. It doesn't matter what access to compute you have. If you don't have the talent to drive that, it's a wasted resource. And it's the same if you look at any software implementation for people who've done traditional software implementations. The system always operates at 100%, but when you actually implement it in your business, it's very unlikely people get to that level of capacity, because people's capacity isn't there. And I think that's a huge issue globally. I sit around lots of tables with different businesses, and even with my Oxford peers, there's 80 of us currently in an executive program at Oxford in talking about AI for business. It's a hands-on program. And one of the first questions that the professor asked was, how many of you can give me an example of how you have actually used AI to transform your business? And nobody had one. In every organization, even the organizations that are the most AI forward currently, there are pockets of people in every department who are using it to great gain. So there'll be pockets of people in every team, in every department using it well, but to scale it team-wide, organization-wide, is practically impossible at the moment. And the barrier is not the tool or the data or the money behind it, it's the people's talent. So until we upskill everybody, it's never going to reach the scale that we need it to make real change.
So here is the insight I think most leaders miss. She's saying the problem is in the technology. The technology works. You can buy it, you can deploy it. The problem is your people don't know what to do with it. And I see it all the time. A CTO buys Copilot, announces it in all hands, sends a login link. 3 months later, barely anyone's still using it. So the tool wasn't the problem. Nobody knows how to actually use it in their day-to-day work. But here is what really struck me. Even at Oxford, in a room full of 80 executives running AI programs, almost nobody could point to a single transformed business unit. Not because of budget, not because of wrong tool, because the human capability wasn't there. You see, you can have the best AI systems of the world, but if your people can't drive it, it's a wasted resource. Her words, and she's right. That really raises the next question. How do you really build that capability? Because when most people hear training, they think consultants, workshops, big budgets. So I wanted to understand how she is doing this at near zero cost.
So I actually think training has to be siloed by what you are trying to train and who you are trying to train. So for leaders, board members, people, CEOs, strategists within a company, I still believe that they need to learn the fundamental knowledge of AI, because they're the ones who have to drive it forward culturally. They have to make the big decisions about what to invest in. And they do need structured training, I still believe. For everybody else, which is 90% of the workforce or 95% of the workforce, they don't need to know how an AI model functions. They don't need to know about data centers. They don't need to know the theoretical knowledge of machine learning and its origins from 1955. Absolutely irrelevant. I believe that for the rest of the workforce, we should be training them by looking at vocational models. training one trainer within each department of an organization and allowing them to train the rest of the organization. So the marketing person will teach the marketing team something very different to what the HR person will teach the HR team. But you're only upskilling one member of staff in each department and they're doing the rest of the job. And actually people learn very well that way. So for me, that's the best way to keep rolling it out at a cost that's manageable and to keep people upskilled. You are rehumanizing your staff at the same time. And that's why it's such a great model.
Okay, this is completely different from what I usually hear. You see, most companies, they hire consultants, they run workshops, everybody nods. 2 weeks later, hardly anyone remembers anything. What she is describing is just the opposite. Train one person per department, give them 3 hours a week, let them train their team inside their actual workflow with their actual use cases, and cost practically zero. The only cost is the time. And what I find really interesting is the social piece. People aren't logging into course alone and watching videos, collecting certificates, and forgetting everything. They're learning together, and capability actually sticks. And the real reason this works is simple. People learn faster from someone who understands their job, not from someone who understands AI. And this is how you can try. Find one person in your team who's already using AI. Give them 3 hours every week. Block the time, entire team. Train together, real work, real use cases. 4 weeks later, if it works, expand it. If it doesn't, you learn something a month instead of burning the entire training budget. That's it. That's the first move. But now we are getting something deeper. Because throughout this conversation, she keeps coming back to one word, and that is control. And I started wondering, what exactly are we at risk of losing?
When you are choosing how you are going to move forward with AI, one of the big things that you have to think about first is, do you want to have full ownership and control over that system? Or are you willing to procure something that somebody else has full ownership of and control over? What companies are working towards more now, and I see this in a lot of companies, they are building their own small language models for a variety of reasons. They have more control over it. They have more security over their data. It's only running off the data that they give them. So for them, especially if you're in a high risk sector such as finances, healthcare, that's a secure system. You can't have control of your countrywide data going to another country. You have to have that control over it. There's other issues from a countrywide perspective. So one of the things the Premier said to us when we first started on this journey was he wanted to preserve the Caymanian culture. So that's obviously a huge thing. Whatever AI we implement, it has to be adapted to our culture. It has to understand the nuances of our country. That's culturally not going to fit our community. So it's not going to work for us because it's not going to understand our nuances. And that's something that we are working through at the moment. So there's a variety of ways we can overcome that. We can still buy one of these models and fundamentally change it and retrain it based upon our culture, or we can build a country model that is trained first on our culture, our data, our people.
All right, she's talking about preserving Caymanian culture, about not letting the foreign AI models quietly impose someone else's worldview. And at first, I'm thinking, okay, that's national sovereignty issue. Interesting for governments, but what about companies? But then something clicked. Replace the Caymanian culture with your own company's institutional knowledge. The same problem. When you train your entire team on ChatGPT, you are training them on intelligence that was built somewhere else with someone else's data, optimized for someone else's problem. And over time, you just don't become productive. You become more standardized. You lose the small, invisible things that make your company unique: the judgment, the nuances, the way the decisions are made. And here is the part that hit me. This drift isn't abstract, it becomes financial. Because once your workflows depend on vendor models, you have no leverage. If pricing change, then you pay. If terms change, then you comply. If product shifts, then you adapt. And it doesn't just show up as loss of control. It shows up on your SaaS bill, your cloud costs, and your vendor spend going up every year. And one day, you realize that you are running your business on rented intelligence. So the trade off is real, the convenience now and dependencies later. And the most companies don't make that choice consciously. They just drift. So I wanted to understand, what does not drifting actually look like? Not in theory, but in practice. And that's where Tamsin's thinking really gets interesting, because she is not just being careful about what tools she picks, she's changing the system itself.
The one thing I did notice was that the people who were doing the best things were the ones who were not trying to work within normal constraints, but were actually breaking down those barriers. And the biggest thing for AI is that it can force us to think differently. A lot of us, when we're thinking about AI and how we can use it, we overwhelm ourselves because we think it has to be really complicated. And sometimes you have to bring it all the way back and look at what's simple. In China, there was an issue in the K-12 schooling system in that children weren't learning appropriately. They weren't coming out with the grades that they needed. At the same time, the instructors were suffering with a lot of mental health challenges because they were having big class sizes and lots of failures, etc. So she went in and she revolutionized it. And one of the really, really simple things she did was halfway through a lesson, they adopted a real-time quiz which knowledge checked each student as to where they were at that point in the lesson. And an AI tool gave real-time feedback to the tutor, and it then told the tutor how to adapt the rest of the lesson to each individual student. Super simple. So lots of people worldwide have tried to do this, but the testing happens afterwards. So the lesson happens, the kids go home, they do their assignment, and then they test it. It's too late then. All she did was nudge it forward midway into the lesson so that it could be adapted sooner.
Wait, this is brilliant. She didn't invent a new system. She moved one thing. Instead of testing students after the lesson, test them during, then adapt in real time. That's it. That's the intervention. And that's what AI transformation really is. It's not automation, but faster feedback loops. And I'm thinking this is exactly what most companies get wrong about AI. They overcomplicate it. They think they need a massive transformation, new org chart, 6 months roadmap, change management consultants. But what if you just need to move one thing at the right time? Think about it. Instead of reviewing whether AI is working at the end of the quarter, check weekly, adjust it. Instead of training people on AI in a classroom, train them inside the workflow while work is actually happening. Same principle. Move one thing earlier, everything else changes. But now we are back to the tension that she mentioned. How do you move fast without breaking things? And here is what I see most organizations do. They slow down. Endless pilots, committees, approvals, waiting for someone else's to go first. But AI isn't waiting. So what's the answer? How do you take the leap without losing control?
It's taking the leap. And the only way you can really do that is to have the governance structure in place. And I know governance is a really boring topic for a lot of people. But unless the governance is in place, it's too big a risk. So with any AI augmentation, make sure your governance is in place, make sure it's structured, make sure that people know how to use it, and then go for it. Like, don't be scared. I think we've hit a point in the world now with AI where we can't take baby steps anymore because it's accelerating too fast. So I think we have to start taking that bigger leap and taking more of a risk with implementation.
Okay, so answer is governance. And I know that what you're thinking, because I thought the same thing. Governance sounds like bureaucracy. Governance sounds like a thing that slows you down. But she's saying the opposite. Governance is actually lets you run, because without it, every decision feels risky. You don't know what's safe. You take baby steps, you run pilots, you never scale, you wait. But then governance is in place, then you have the clear guardrails. You can move because you know the boundaries. You know what you're protecting, and you know what happens when something breaks. So, what does it look like in real practical sense? I think it comes down to the three questions that you need to answer before you go fast. What can this system access? Who can override it? And how do you know when something breaks? That's it. Three questions. If you can answer those clearly, you can pilot fast, you can scale with confidence. And here's what's interesting. If you're a startup, you can probably answer all three in a week. In a large enterprise, it could take about 6 months, and that's your edge. Use it. All right, so governance enables speed. But now I'm thinking about something else. Everything that she described, training, governance, control, is all about fixing existing organizations. But what if you are starting from zero? What if you're building from scratch?
I actually think it's easier for startup companies than established companies in today's day and age because they can really start off as an AI native company. So if they are new, they can evolve their processes and their structure to implement AI from the beginning. And that's one of the biggest things I would say to any company who's newly formed. Think about how AI or automation or both can inform your company from the beginning and build it around that. Tesla, for example, that's what they do. They build AI self-driving cars. They are no longer just a car manufacturer. They are a very specific AI native company. So for any new company starting up, that's the biggest piece of advice I could give you. Look to the future and see how you can implement that now from day one, because it's going to be a lot harder down the road to start changing processes once they're embedded. The companies who are already established find it a lot harder because, everybody likes to do things the way they've always done it. Nobody likes change. So for more established companies who've always done things a certain way, the cost implication, the retraining implication is much, much harder. So for them, they do have to start off on a smaller scale. So I think it is a very different structure depending on the age of the company.
So, if you're a startup, build AI from the day one. If you're established, start small, one team, one use case, prove it, and then scale. But even if you get all of these things right, still there is one fear. AI is going to eliminate jobs, especially entry level jobs. And I hear this everywhere boardrooms, startups, enterprises. So I asked her this question, which most people are thinking. Listen to what she says.
So I don't think it will wipe out the roles. I think it will augment the roles. I also don't think it's going to only wipe out entry-level jobs. It's going to wipe out everybody's jobs or everybody's tasks. As AI gets more intelligent, which it's doing very, very quickly, it's going to start wiping out higher value tasks, which in turn means higher level jobs. So nobody's safe from it. We're worrying about graduates, but it's gradually moving up the food chain. I think what we have to bear in mind is that every job is going to augment. It's not going to go away. It's going to augment. No job is going to be the same as it was yesterday, next year. It's going to be completely different. Nobody wants to go to a doctor's surgery and be told that they've got a month to live by a robot. They want a human to tell them that. So fundamentally, while culturally we want humans in the loop, which we always will have, and while AI tools need humans in the loop to train them, to prompt them, to be their thought partner, I fundamentally believe the future will always be human and AI. We have to learn to work together.
Okay, so jobs aren't going away, they're augmenting. But that brought up a different question for me because if we are all working alongside AI every day, relying on it, building workflows around it, at what point do you stop thinking for yourself? And here is what worries me. AI is designed to be useful, to sound confident, to please you. It is not designed to challenge you. And if you are not careful, you stop thinking critically and start just accepting what it tells you. And I have seen this happen. Smart people, good people, just nodding along because the AI sounds so sure. So I wanted to understand, how do you use it without losing yourself? And how do you stay sharp?
We live in, or we are starting to live in what they call echo chambers, where an AI, they are built to please you. Obviously, they're a commercial product and they are built with a temperature. It's a temperature dial, which is to please you, tell you you're brilliant, tell you you're great, tell you your answer is amazing. And it's not until as a human you delve deeper and go, let's be critical, be completely critical, tell me the truth. It goes, well, actually, it wasn't that good an answer and it's not that good an idea. But unless we have the capacity and knowledge to do that, we don't do it, and we start believing our own hype. But I only see things about AI on it now. So when I go out into the real world, I flew to England recently and I met some business owners in Manchester, which is the second biggest city. There was a marketing manager, a marketing business owner, a factory manufacturer. There were a couple of students, people from all different sectors, and none of them were using AI. And I remember sitting back and going, but how are you not using AI? Everybody uses it. And it suddenly hit me that a huge percentage of the world aren't using it, but because my messaging that gets delivered to me tells me that everybody's using it, you lose sense of reality.
Most people use AI like a vending machine. Put in a question, get an answer, move on. But she uses it like a sparring partner. She tells it to be critical, to challenge her, to tell her where she's wrong. And that's the difference between using AI as a tool and slowly outsourcing your thinking. Because the real risk isn't AI replaces your job. The real risk is you stop building judgment. Now, before I wrap up, she said one thing at the end of our conversation I think every person listening needs to hear, especially if you are feeling overwhelmed by all of this, and especially if you're thinking, I don't even know where to start.
There's a really good video from a lady called Helen Tonner, who is very advanced in AI governance in America. And she says she speaks to people who are beginners in AI and they say, I don't understand AI. And then she speaks to people who are building AI systems and they say, but I don't understand AI. And I think that's something I always take out to people, that you have to remember that even the people building the systems today at the top of the game don't know everything about it. They don't know everything about how to implement it. They don't know everything about what it's capable of doing. We are all learning together, all of us, and we all have something to give to that. So whether you have a technical background or not, whether you are a beginner or not, don't be afraid of just giving it a go, because everybody has something to give. And if we all use it responsibly, I genuinely believe we will make the world a better place for our future generations.
What I take away from this conversation is simple and uncomfortable. AI doesn't take control from us. We give it up when we stop deciding. She is building this in 83,000 person island nation, one of the most conservative financial hub on the planet. If she can do it there, what's stopping you? But here is the real point though. The window is closing. Right now, you can still decide, you can still set boundaries, you can still build capabilities before you become dependent. Start with one person, one team, one use case. Because in 18 months, when your workflows are wrapped around tools that you don't control, decide becomes big for terms. Decide what stays local, who's accountable, how you build capability instead of renting it. Because organizations that do this don't just use AI better, they will build something that their competitors can't buy. Look, if this conversation helped you think more clearly, not just about AI, but about control and capability, I would really appreciate your support. Share this with one person who's making AI or workforce decision right now. That's how the ideas like this move from conversation into action. And I would love to hear from you. Drop a comment, tell me what resonated, what challenged you, and what are you seeing in your own organization that genuinely shapes what I explore next. And if you want more conversation like this, then hit subscribe. I'm Subrata Kar. This is Spark on the Forge podcast. See you next time. Bye for now.